Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Voyagecast, and this is our final episode in the 3-part Resentment and Release series. In part 1, we unpacked the prison of resentment, the way it traps us in our own mental and emotional loops, often without us actually realizing that we're trapped in there. In part 2, we explored how forgiveness, while not always possible or even wise, can sometimes lead to unexpected healing, even in the most extreme circumstances. We saw this in Mary Johnson's powerful story of reconciling with the man who killed her son. Well, today is about what comes next. Once you've identified the offense and really wrestled with it, how do you actually go beyond it? How do you live beyond these things that have hurt you? Well, we're talking about today the practical and purposeful steps you can take so resentment doesn't set the pace for the rest of your life. This isn't about pretending it never happened, so please don't be confused. It's actually about building a life that isn't shaped by the worst thing that was done to you, and a life that takes strategy, commitment, and sometimes a redefining of what winning really looks like in our lives, of what really it means to get past these things, which is really truly to go through them. Well, let's get into it today. We've all heard the idea that time heals all wounds. I mean, this is a well-meaning but kind of incomplete concept. I think there's genuinely truth to it, but I think there's more. You see, time can dull the edge of the pain. It can also deepen the grooves of the bitterness if we keep rehearsing the story in our heads without actively processing it. Psychological research does show that rumination, the repeated mental replay of an offense or something that happened to you, when you replay that, it can actually strengthen the emotional memory of that event. Your brain is basically re-encoding the experience each time, reinforcing the hurt rather than letting it fade. In other words, time doesn't automatically heal. Time plus intentional work, well, that can really move the needle to something like health. Living beyond an offense does require us to disrupt the cycle, though, of this rumination and introduce actions that build a sense of forward momentum. But one of the hardest parts of this, one of the hardest shifts in this kind of post-resentment life is moving from a story centered on the offender to a story centered on your identity and values. Now, this does matter. Therapeutically, this is called restorying or rewriting your life narrative so that your defining moments are about your growth, not just about your wounds. The act of consciously choosing, I am a person who, fill in the blank, can reframe your identity. In other words, I am a person who values peace over payback. I am a person who learns from pain instead of being owned by it or bowing down to it. I am a person who refuses to let my offender be the author of my story. Now, these statements aren't denial. They're not an effort to just kind of like, what is it, like the eternal sunshine of the spotless mind. If you've seen that movie where Jim Carrey's character erases parts of his memory, that's not what we're talking about. This is about setting boundaries and setting a narrative so that you can actually move forward in healing. But healing is not just about letting go of what's behind. It's about moving forward to what's ahead, whatever you could imagine. And in therapy, I often ask my clients, if the resentment wasn't there, what would you have the capacity to do? Like, if you weren't owned by this, what would your life potentially look like? It's sort of a miracle question in some sense, but this is something that you can ask yourself. You can take that with you, and you can bring that into the world, and you can start reevaluating, if this resentment didn't dictate my life, what would I be able to do? Really consider that. Take time to think about what you're capable of if that boat anchor of resentment was released from your waist and you were actually allowed to swim freely in the waters of life. Where would you go? Maybe it's investing in relationships you've neglected, picking up a passion you abandoned, or finally pursuing the goal that resentment made you feel like was pointless, or that depression that comes with all that pain made you feel like it was pointless. You see, setting concrete, time-bound goals gives your brain something new to fixate on, a sense of pull instead of push. Neurologically forward-looking goals activate the brain's dopamine system, helping replace the reward loop of being right, quote unquote, with the reward loop of building something new. Now, moving forward, one tool that can actually be really helpful in this area of kind of future-focused plans is SMART goals. If you don't know what SMART goals are, just Google them, and you will find plenty of options to help you with that and help you understand what they are. So another strategy for kind of future-focused planning or moving beyond or continually moving forward in living beyond the offenses is boundaries. But that doesn't mean you stop protecting yourself. It just means you're creating a new structure in life where you can maintain healing. Boundaries can be physical, like I won't meet this person alone again because they were physically harmful. Boundaries can be emotional, like I won't seek their validation anymore because they always hurt me when I'm vulnerable. Boundaries can even be digital, like I'm going to block them or mute them online, or I'm going to stop following their story. I have a lot of clients who get kind of caught up in following people's stories and looping and obsessing. Well, boundaries say, no, I'm no longer doing that because I'm no longer going to let them control my life and stop me from moving forward. You see, without boundaries, resentment can really sneak back in through unguarded exposure. One study from the Journal of Behavioral Medicine found that people who paired forgiveness work, like the work of forgiveness, with proactive boundary setting had significantly lower stress hormone response levels than those who forgave without boundaries. So what's the takeaway here? Forgiveness without self-protection is often short-lived. Another really important piece to moving forward is gratitude. Now, I know this is going to sound cliche, but it's just a fact. Gratitude is actually one of the most well-supported psychological tools for long-term emotional recovery. Daily gratitude practices shift attention from what's missing or damaged to what's present and valuable. Over time, this rebalances the brain's negativity bias, making you less likely to fixate on the offense. It's not about ignoring the pain. It's about training the mind to see a bigger picture. Well, and if you want to continue to train your brain, I want to introduce you to something. Voyages Counseling, which is the mothership for this podcast, the VoyageCast, well, we now offer neurofeedback, which helps us train the brain. And we offer that treatment here in Lone Tree, Colorado. And if you are interested, check out our website, voyagescounseling.com. That's VOYAGES counseling.com. And you can get set up for neurofeedback, or at least a brain map. You can get set up probably this week if you reach out. So whether it's therapy you're looking for, neurofeedback, practical relationship tools, our mission at Voyages Counseling, which is why we do this podcast, is to help you move forward with clarity, strength, and hope. So reach out today. Check out our website, voyagescounseling.com, and get started. You don't have to do this journey alone. All right, let's move on to another piece here. This is kind of like what I want to call the release ritual. Sometimes moving on needs a symbolic act. Psychologists often use release rituals, writing letters you never send, burning a physical reminder of the offense, or creating a piece of art that represents the transition from the pain, the suffering, the event to this new, better place in life. Neuropsychology backs this up. Symbolic actions engage the emotion centers of the brain, helping to cement these cognitive decisions as felt experiences. So I want to give a real-life experience about all of these things we've talked about today. Let's take the example of Australian surfer Mick Fanning. In 2015, during a live competition, Fanning survived a shark attack. While physically unharmed, he carried deep emotional trauma. He was hypervigilant, he had nightmares, he had growing resentment toward the circumstances that really stole his sense of safety while in the water and while doing something that he obviously loved, something that he competed on. Now, instead of letting the fear and resentment end his career, Fanning worked with sports psychologists to process the event more deeply. He didn't deny, of course, the danger. Obviously, sharks don't just suddenly disappear from the water just because you are working with a psychologist. But he redefined his relationship with the ocean. He began documenting his travels, creating environmental campaigns, and coaching young surfers. His story shows that living beyond can mean re-engaging with what scared you to begin with, but you can do it now on your terms. The key parallel here is this. Fanning didn't erase the event. He expanded his life so the event became one chapter, not the title of the book and not the whole story. Just a part of it, maybe even a catalyst to create further chapters to expand the story to make it something even more beautiful. But this kind of building of a story is an ongoing experience, isn't it? Like, we never end the development of our story. There's always a next chapter, which is kind of exciting. Sometimes that might feel daunting, but I think it's kind of exciting. And so moving beyond resentment is not a one-time decision. It's practical. Just like you can drift back into resentment without realizing it, you can also reinforce freedom by returning to your values, goals, and gratitude habits regularly. But this is a decision to do that. Moving beyond resentment is not a one-time choice. And moving into values, goals, and gratitude and good, healthy habits is also a decision. Healing is a voyage. It's not a single act. It never has been. It never was. No matter what anybody in pop psychology will tell you, that is just not true. But every step you take beyond the offense, no matter how small it is, reclaims ground that bitterness can no longer control, and it leaves no ability for bitterness to take root. So if you appreciated this episode and you liked what you heard, share it with somebody that you love, maybe even somebody that you hate, but share it nonetheless, because the algorithm overlords needs you to share it, and it also needs you to give us 5 stars. And I think that's a menial price for the work that we put into this. And so you're welcome for me doing all this work and sharing it with you so that you can have this help beyond the office. Because therapy is truly a daily act. It doesn't have to be with a therapist, but it is that intentional effort, isn't it, to grow ourselves beyond, to become who we could be. And so give us those 5 stars, subscribe, let us help you beyond the office so that you can continue to develop into who you could be. All right, we'll see you next time.